Hey everybody, it is Team Z speaking to you from room 100 in Hutchins Hall at the University of Michigan Law School, also known as Honigman Auditorium. Fun fact, this is the fourth time I have started this video, but Dustin is incredibly patient. We love that about him. I want to talk to you today about early decision, pros and cons. I don't think this is going to be a super long episode, even though my ability to go is surprising even to myself sometimes. But let's try and keep it precise and to the point and, very efficient. All right. Roughly speaking, the pro, and I'm going to dive into this more obviously, but the pro of applying early is you get your answer early. If it's a good answer, you're all done, blah, right? And you are in presumably at your dream school. And frankly, it gives you a little bit of an edge to apply early decision. The cons, there are a lot of them. You don't know, there's a possibility that maybe you think it's your dream school, but you haven't done enough research, that the money, financial aid, is going to be an unknown at the time you make a decision to commit. Even if you know that school's financial aid, the big picture, you won't have that. And you're applying, this is a pro that you're applying early in the cycle, but it also can be a con because things change. So let's explore all of these a little bit more. Let's start with the early in the cycle thing. Okay, so you shouldn't apply early decision to any school that you are not very confident is your first choice school. I know that I say this, and a lot of people apply because they are trying to game the system. They think, I am an okay candidate for this school, and this school is the hardest to get in of the schools that I'm interested in, that I think I can reasonably get in. So I'll apply early decision, it'll give me an edge, and then I'll be in. And maybe that is all true, and yet maybe you will end up not liking the school because you didn't do enough investigating. So you really have to not just look online, and not just look at a ranking, not just look at data, but talk to some people, talk to people at the school, talk to an alum or two, talk to other lawyers, like all the things that you would do if you applied regular decision and got in and were weighing your options between 5 or 6 different schools. You really need to do that work because once you're admitted, it's binding and you're stuck. And I will say that if someone came to me and said, I now realize that I really hate your school and I don't want to come, I would not want to hold you to that bargain. But I can't guarantee that that is true of other schools, and I can't guarantee how I'm going to feel in that moment. And you might have to at least put up with a little lecture from me, which I might enjoy, but no one else would. So, really do your work at the front end. Here's another aspect. So you presumably when you're applying early decision, you're going to apply to fewer schools. You're going to do your best job on the dream school that you're applying early decision to, but maybe you'll do a couple other applications, but mostly you're going to put your eggs in the basket of the early decision school. Then if you find out for us it's mid-December, some schools it's early December, some schools it's January. If you find out and it's an unhappy answer, then you have a real time crunch for getting your other applications in. And yet, if you don't do it that way, then you have then eliminated one of the benefits of applying early decision, which is cutting down on the number of applications that you have to fill out. So that's a balance there. And it, I think, frankly, detracts a little bit from the value of early decision. However, on the plus side, if you do apply and you get in, then you have a lot of time, more time than you typically would have, to really investigate the school and figure out, where do I want to live? What should I be doing to prepare? And just, living your life and planning for the future in a very positive way. So that's an upside, but it's not a clear picture there, so you have to consider that. Let's think about money next, because I think that is the biggest uncertainty and downside from an applicant's perspective. Not everybody gets money at law school, right? So maybe you think that you know your numbers, you know your background, you think maybe I can get into this school, but I am unlikely to be someone who's going to get a big merit package, and I know I don't have need-based aid. In which case, maybe you're planning to pay full freight and you are comfortable with that decision. If you were that person, then early decision really, I do think, is a very good option for you if you have a dream school. If you don't, then it's a terrible option. But if you know you have a dream school and financial aid isn't an issue, great. Schools approach financial aid in 3 different ways for early decision, though. Actually, 4 different ways. One is they tell you at the outset, if you get in early decision, we will give you X amount of money. Okay, there's no uncertainty there. That is very nice. Another is what Michigan does, which is if you get in early decision, we will treat you exactly like everybody else we admit regular decision. More uncertainty because you don't know exactly in any given year what we're going to do, because we don't really start giving out financial aid till December. So that's some uncertainty for you. And also you have to have trust. I mean, obviously I think you can trust us, but I don't know, you're on the other side. Do you trust strangers at a school to do that if that's what they say they're going to do? A third approach is, frankly, you get in, you're not going to get money. You're early decision and they know you're coming and you're not going to get any money. That's not great. And then the fourth is the worst of all possible worlds, which is they just don't say anything at all about how they treat you. And in that case, I'd probably assume they don't give you financial aid, but that, to me, the failure to specify is a serious problem. Okay, so those are the 4 possible options. But even in that best case scenario, when you know going in exactly what you're going to get, I don't think that's great if you really care about the financing of your education, because you won't get to compare it to other schools. So maybe you think, School A is my dream school, and they have told me that they will give me $40,000 a year if they admit me. But maybe School B is your dream school minus 1/100th, and they were going to give you $60,000 a year, which would more than make up for that 1/100th difference between School A and School B. You see what I mean? It's like it's a balance, and you got to think about that. But to me, unless you are really insensitive to price, I find that to be something I would worry about if there was a young person I knew who was thinking about applying early decision to law school. Now I will argue the other side, not about financial aid, but about a different matter, which is the extent to which it gives you an edge in getting admitted. It does. Schools will often say they'll be very unclear about this. And they'll say it's not a big advantage, And it's not a big advantage. I'm not going to admit somebody who I don't want in the law school just because they applied early decision and I know I will get them if I admit them. But it does give me, it's a smaller pool. I admit a small number of people from it. I have a lot more flexibility there. So a lot of the people who I admit who are under both our medians, those are people who have applied early decision, and I really value their commitment to the institution, and the fact that I know I'm going to get them, helps me feel better about not getting any good medians there. And so, some of the most interesting people in our class are people who applied early decision, whose numbers may not be at the tippy top. They're obviously solid students. Again, not going to admit people who I don't think can do the work here, not going to admit people who I don't otherwise want, but there are people who maybe are just under both medians, and this gave them the edge they needed to get in. Or they're splitters or what have you. They're just people who have some element of their application that's strong and appealing and great, but maybe some element that is also less appealing and less great. And so they're a mixed candidate, and this can be the way to give themselves that small edge that ends in a glorious success. So that's the plus side. And then the other, pro-con combined is that you're applying early in the cycle. So you get, as I said, you get your answer early. But then, this is part of, you may not have had a chance to do all your due diligence if you're applying early. And plus, things change. Like, things change in your life. So maybe you think coming to Ann Arbor, Michigan is going to be great when you're filling out your applications in September. But then you fall in love with somebody in March, and suddenly you don't want to relocate to Ann Arbor, Michigan. So, and you're bound, right? So the earliness can also be a downside, especially at a time of life that most law school applicants are, where the lives are very much in flux. So that's So that's just something to think about. The final thing I want to say is about gaming the system. I referred to that at the very beginning, that sometimes people are doing this to give themselves an edge, and they're not really in love with this school, and that's problematic in a lot of ways. But the other kind of gaming that goes on is that people apply to multiple schools at once, early decision, which you are not supposed to do, because the rules say that if you get admitted, you are committing to attend. So if you're applying to 2 schools that you are committing to attend, if admitted, obviously you're aligned to one of those schools. And every year we have people who apply early decision and then suddenly withdraw. The only way that particular pattern of behavior makes sense is if they've done this, if they've applied to 2 different schools and one let them in before we did. I don't do anything about that as a general proposition. Other schools do, and that can be unpleasant for you. So avoiding unpleasantness is worthwhile. But the other thing is just, I have strong feelings about you're going into a profession, profession of responsibility and honor, and you need to start taking that seriously as early as the application process. So if you are committing to something, it should be something that you are prepared to follow through on. Okay, that's my small lecture for the day. And that is all I have to say about early decision. As I said, it took me 4 starts to get going here, but I think I kind of brought it together there. So I hope you think so too. Thanks, as always, to Dustin Johnston, who is so patient with me. And if you have any comments or questions, I almost forgot to say that, any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below or email us at law.jd.admissions@umich.edu. And wherever you go, go blue.